when you install a custom ROM on a Pixel, it tells you that you're loading a different operating system when you start up. So there is hardwired code. Is there other hardwired code like telemetry?
I mean, hardwired code, there's firmware on all these devices. I mean, the chips don't just do what the software tells it to do and nothing else. All of these computers basically have smaller computers inside of them dictating everything that's happening on your device, and that is just the reality of modern computers. That there's all of these different subsystems that you never really have access to or even notice, but that is what informs a lot of what these devices do, and it improves performance in a lot of ways, and that's just how modern devices work. So the question of like whether there's telemetry and stuff like that, it seems unlikely because most of these systems like don't have direct network access or direct memory access or that kind of thing, and I mean, they're not supposed to. That would be a security risk. In some cases, they do. It's impossible to say at the end of the day. Like, I mean, that's a huge issue with like Intel Management Engine, for example, where the reality is you just have no idea what it's doing in the background because it's its own computer that gets updated independently and controls all the other stuff on your device. And that just, it is what it is. But I've seen no evidence that any of these systems are doing telemetry, and no reason to think that if you use a custom ROM on a Google Pixel device, that isn't totally secure and working for you.
Yeah.
Does that sum it up?
Yeah, I know. And again, it's one of those things that it's tough. I think some people in the space are a lot quicker to just assume that there's malintent and that there's a possibility of wrongdoing. And we don't take that approach as much. For us, it's more like, well, we want to see the evidence of something going wrong. And each approach has pros and cons. I mean, the approach that the other people take means that, even if 9 out of 10 things they suggest to do don't matter and are a waste of time and a waste of money, they might get one thing right occasionally, right? Like they'll say that this crazy thing is happening, which isn't actually happening, but it turns out, it to be true. Whereas on our ends, we'll recommend like, 10 evidence-based things, and then 9 of which are extremely good, and then one of which is like, well, you missed this one thing because we didn't have evidence for it and we couldn't predict this happening, pretty much. So it's just different approaches. So I think we're more conservative in our recommendations, and there's just no evidence for this. It's easy for researchers to analyze network traffic leaving devices. So it would be extremely easy for researchers to see that there's like hidden telemetry on these devices. Even though they are black boxes, they're not black
Yep.
boxed enough that you can't see what it does after the fact. And it's a similar thing with iOS, right? People say iOS is closed source, and it is. But researchers are still able to analyze what happens on iOS because there's a ton of forensic tools that you can utilize to try to figure out what the operating system is doing. And actually, I made a whole video too. I think it's called Are Custom ROMs Safe? And that video specifically dives into it doesn't even go into the tech. It just goes into I am Google and I want to track people and get as much data as I want. Let's go through the best ways to do that. And pretty much what it looks like is this isn't necessary. Everyone uses Google Play services on their Android device. Even custom ROM users, a lot of them use Google Play services on their devices, and Google still gets their data and they still get all the telemetry they need. They don't need to hardwire your phone with these fancy, sophisticated, theoretical attacks that just have no evidence or proof of existing. So not necessary. It's very expensive to do. It requires tech that doesn't seem to exist as far as we know. And I think it's unlikely. Maybe someday, but I have not seen any evidence for it. And again, the last thing I'll say, hypothetical versus realistic risks. You know that there is telemetry in most pieces of software you get by default. Deal with those, and don't be scared to use a custom ROM just because of a hypothetical risk. Thanks for watching this Techlore clip. This actually comes from the main Techlore channel where we talk about digital rights, privacy, security, and how to keep yourself safe and sane online. We'll see you over on the main channel, or feel free to check out some more clips.